Okay, good morning all. This was meant to be extremely informal. It was meant to entertain the CCD parents for 20 minutes or so. So it got a little bit out of hand by inviting the whole parish, but nevertheless, it was meant for the CCD parents. First of all, let me say a little bit about me. Myra and I were married in 1975. Which is probably older than most of you, but anyway. We moved to Randolph in 1975. In the beginning, in 1975, there were no churches in Randolph. We actually had gone to a couple of different churches in the area and ended up at Del Barton. We liked the priests at Del Barton. We went to the church in Del Barton for years. And then we had heard that they were starting a parish in Randolph. That was in 1978, I believe. So in 1978, we began going to masses at the middle school. Now, you guys know the middle school. So in the auditorium, on the stage, was the altar. And that's where we had our masses. Our daughter was born in 1979, and I remember coming in with a stroller down the aisles in the auditorium, and we'd have mass in the middle school. Talking about the middle school, that banner over there of Mary and Jesus was used on the altar in the middle school. We had two of them. We had one of Jesus, one of Mary, and then the altar was in the middle. They have been around, obviously, since 1979. They were made by Mary Ann Zaccanata, who we have been so blessed that she was like the local resident artist in this parish. And I'll be talking about a lot of things that she did in here. But I encourage you to go take a look at it up close and personal, because it's made out of little pieces of felt. And it's just amazing that it just has such a beautiful view from far away. But wait till you get up close and see the little details in that. All right, the other thing I wanted to pre-announce is, excuse my attire, but after this, I'm heading for the game. So.
Good luck to you.
All right, so I talked about the middle school. The church was dedicated in October of '83. This is a post-Vatican II structure. And by that, if you've gone to churches before Vatican II, it was all, the altar was turned around, the priest, you were looking at his back. Vatican II changed everything around. So when we built this building, there was no need for an altar to be at the back. It was the table facing the people. So that's why this was built this way. It was built in the round. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The whole idea behind this church was to be very neutral in color. The thought that Mary Ann was telling me was that she said the people and what they wear and who they are bring the color into the church, and that we're keeping everything very neutral. Originally, there were 3 steps. Up here, I have a pointer actually. Yes. There were 3 steps. 3 steps, and then in the renovation of the building of the church, it was reduced to 2. It just felt that like the priest was too high on a stage and wanted to be closer to the people. We reduced it to 2. A very important thing regarding this parish was some of the original concepts of the founding members when we started this parish. One of them was no kneelers. So originally the pews had no kneelers, and we stood for all the acclamations. It was sort of a view that standing was important. You were giving your support by standing. If you travel in Europe, you'll find that a lot of churches really stand in other parts of the world. They don't kneel. It's only in the United States that we kneel. So we had no kneelers, and that was fine until we decided we needed to renovate the church, and we were putting in new pews. Well, the bishop had his say about this, and absolutely, you can't go forward unless you put in kneelers. He said you don't have to use them, but they have to be there. So that's why we have kneelers. So we had one guy on the renovation committee, Steve Prokowski. he said, I have bad knees. I'm going to pick the kneelers. So he met with a lot of vendors to make sure that the kneelers were soft, and they are. They're very nice kneelers compared to other churches I've been in. That was Steve Prokowski. The other important concept that we had very early, day one, is not to pass the basket during Mass. You know, you see ushers walking around, everybody stops concentrating on the Mass and goes for their wallet or goes for their checkbook or whatever. And we decided we did not want to do that in this parish. I personally have met with every new pastor coming in, and I told them, doesn't matter what you do, this is sacrosanct. You cannot change this. So having said that, it's also important that we support this by, there's parish pay, there's all sorts of ways that you could help contribute to the parish. Certainly we have collection boxes. That was the other thing that the bishop insisted on, that we have collection boxes that are locked. He was afraid, we originally had just baskets out, and he said, no, don't do that, have locked boxes. So you can contribute your money into those locked boxes, the ushers clear them out after the Masses. Okay, let's go on. I talked about the church being in the round as being post-Vatican II concept, but what's important here too is that if you look up the ceiling, there are 12 sections. So the round church is made up of 12 sections. 12 is an important, it's actually biblical. It goes back to basically the Jews have that's a very sacred number to them. It means the whole or everything or everybody. There are 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus had 12 apostles. Even in our world, there are 12 months of the year, 12 in a dozen. 12 is so important, we give it a special name, a dozen. You know, so it's really interesting that I never realized how important the number 12 is, but obviously our architect did. When you have a round structure, one of the great things about it is that there's short aisles. So there's less of a distance between every person and the altar than in a traditional church, which you have a long aisle, and you know people sit in the back and they're far, far away from the altar. We decided that this was important to be close to the altar and see everything. The materials that were used in the church were very natural. They're mostly wooden ceilings, wooden struts, wooden pews, wooden altar. Everything was wood. The original plan, see these windows around the church? The original plan was that all these windows were going to be stained glass windows. That was the thought. And then when the church was built, Father Martin was looking and he goes, this is too beautiful to cover with stained glass. So the view that we have of the back parking lot and all the trees, Father Martin decided we were going to keep that, save the money, not spend it on stained glass, and enjoy the outside surrounding. During the 2007 renovation of the church itself, the baptismal font was moved. The original baptismal font was in the choir section where the organ is, and it was just too tight. The choir wanted more space and deserved more space. So we moved the baptismal font to the back of the church. Another big change in this renovation was the flooring. I said we were trying to use natural materials, and the original church had slate flooring. It was a beautiful blue slate pattern flooring everywhere. It was all along the walkways, along the aisles. It was gorgeous, except high heels and shoes. You hear every click, click, clank, clank. And, people are coming and going during the Mass. So we said, all right, we got to quiet that down. So the renovation committee decided to remove the tile and put in the rug. Let me talk a little bit about the stained glass windows that we have here. There are two on either side of the altar. That's where we do have the stained glass. the stained glass has a rainbow on the left side. It's got a rainbow up here, and really the rainbow is from the Old Testament. This is the original covenant with God, and that it was not this. This was in the Bible regarding the flood. You know, the rainbow appeared, and that was the covenant with man that God will not do this again. And there's another rainbow that continues down here into the earth. And this second rainbow was the second covenant. That's Jesus coming to us. I said the lower part, it represents an earth. There's also a dove. That's the clearest image I see when you're sitting looking at this window. It's a dove pops out because the dove's all white here. But there's also a symbol of Christianity in the fish here. This is, again, a very ancient symbol. We've seen it in Jerusalem. For those of you who've been on the Jerusalem tour, there were churches that had this fish. So it goes back, I guess it goes back to Jesus. It's 2,000 years old. It represented Jesus.
And the reason for that was the Greek letters, ichthos means fish, and it was a symbol that said Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. And you couldn't get into the catacombs or the communities without the password. Sometimes the password was the sign of the cross, or you had a symbol, or you said ichthus, fish. Well, who knows what the hell fish is, right? So, but it meant Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior, so they could make a Christian symbol without the government knowing it. And that's why it's everywhere.
Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the stained glass on the right side of the altar. This one really, Marianne explained it to me as meaning, it really talks about new life. There's plants in here, it's a lot of green, there's some grapes, there's, you see some ferns in here. The thing that hits me about this one is, you know, we have some brown here, but this very center, this clear, I see it as the host. It's really, it lines up directly with the sanctuary lamp that's in the chapel. So the idea was that when you're in the church, in the pews, you could see through this into the sanctuary lamp. See that the candle is lit. Talking about the chapel. So on the other side of the altar is the chapel. The chapel, again, is a stone structure. There's the tabernacle is in there, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But here's a close-up of the other side of the stained glass window, where the host that I was talking about lines up with the sanctuary lamp. The tabernacle itself, Father Martin wanted to have a burning bush, is what I understand. I wasn't part of that, but he wanted a burning bush. And the architect or the sculptor who did this came up with something that was like 10 feet tall. And he goes, no, that's too big. And this is, it's about 2 feet tall and contains these consecrated hosts. That's where it's stored. Let's talk about the sanctuary wall itself. Obviously, the most important and the thing that hits you when you walk into our church is this wall of stone. The original plan for the wall of stone, remember Father Roger was here. He was doing masses in middle school, talking with people. And he had this idea that Randolph has got so many rocks that everybody in the parish should go in their backyard and dig up the biggest rock they could find and bring it to the church, and we will build this wall out of your stones and of your rocks in your backyard. Well, that was a good plan until the mason heard about it and said, absolutely not. He said, we're not doing that. So we have stones that the mason had picked, and obviously it's a lot easier for him. But the important thing to know is that theoretically, what Martin wanted is that it represents us. So when you look at this wall, remember this is us. This is the living stones. We are the living stones. The image itself of Jesus, of the risen Jesus, Mary Ann had drawn up a picture, and I have the original here, believe it or not. This is her original drawing of what this should look like. She sketched it out and framed it and sized it. Jesus, guess what? Jesus is 12 feet tall. And she had picked out stones for this that were light in color. They were sort of a whitish color, and she had picked out the stones. When the mason went to do it, I guess it was a rainy morning or something, he didn't see which stones were which and just did it. So we didn't have the white stones. It was a very even distribution of the stones. Having said that, when this first opened, you could not see Jesus. And people would walk in and they would know that Jesus is there, but it really didn't pop out to you. And I remember sitting in Mass and people nudging each other and drawing, like showing other people where his arms are, where his head was. So this went on for a couple of years, and then it was decided, we need to highlight it more. So it was drawn, they put in a different color grout around Jesus. There were all sorts of discussions on what to do. One was to shellac it and to make those stones shiny. They opted to this, just outlining the statue. So as I said, this original diagram, what Tony did, Tony Zaccanata was a teacher at Randolph High School, and he made a transparency of this. And they had a slide projector, a viewgraph machine, up on a ladder, and it was raised on the concrete wall, the cinder block wall, and they drew it in based on the image that was being projected from the church. So there's some pictures that show them standing on the ladders, drawing these pictures in. But it's a significant part of our church. One of the things I wanted to make sure, especially for the CCD parents, is that you talk to your children about the stones on the altar representing us. And I really encourage you to talk to them about it and tell them to pick their stone. Which stone is yours? I mean, that's one of the things that Father Martin did originally. He said, okay, this represents us. All right, you didn't bring your stone from the yard, but pick your stone. Which stone are you? So encourage them to do that they're part of all of us as part of the parish. You want to see my stone? This is this is my stone here. And it's interesting. It's probably interesting if you talk to people about where their stone is and try to evaluate why they picked where they picked it. But that's a topic for another talk. All right, let's talk about the Mary plaque. Just to the left of the altar is the Mary plaque. What is so impressive about this is that Father Martin went to Italy and was picking up Renaissance paintings. Now, our church is anything but Renaissance, so it's a nice juxtaposition between a modern church and the Renaissance paintings of Mary of so long ago. Tony built the oval and mounted it, and it's been up there since the beginning. The Stations of the Cross, as you know, as you walk out into the church, there's Stations of the Cross around the church. They were made in Italy. It was originally, I guess it was machined, but then a lot of detailed work had to be done. What I find interesting about these stations is the cross. Every one of these, the cross is huge. It's out of proportion with the rest of the figures, and it's just the artist's way of communicating that this is about the cross and the journey of Jesus. And Jesus, the other thing is Jesus is brushed in gold. So every picture that every cutout that has Jesus on it has got some gold accent. Again, it's the stuff is in the details. When you walk out, just look at one or two of them and look at the details that's in the Stations of the Cross, and notice that the exaggerated cross, or notice the gold on Jesus. It's there's a lot of thought that was put into this stuff that we just take for granted. The thing I'm going to talk about is the hallway area. The memorial wall alcove, this was introduced by Father John Andrew. He had an icon of the life of Jesus, and he wanted to do something with this icon. And he suggested, he talked to me and he said, "Bob, could you build something that we could put crosses on?" So I went and got, actually the arch is from our patio doors. We had a piece of molding that it wasn't quite the right size, and we had to get a second one. So we got a second one, and I had this arch. I went, you know what? I could do that. So I got some verticals and had the arch and put in nails on the verticals. We only had 2 verticals at the beginning, and then more and more people were dying within a year. We had to add a second row of verticals. So the custom that Father Andrew started is that when someone dies and is buried out of the church, or has a funeral mass out of the church, there's a cross with their name on that's on the altar. After, when they process out of the church, they stop at the memorial wall, and the cross is placed on the memorial wall. It's up there for typically till November. At the All Souls Mass at the church, these crosses are removed and they're brought to the altar, and they're distributed to the families. So the families get the crosses eventually, but they hang on the memorial wall here for, from 2 months to a year, depending on when people died. So the thing I'd like you to do is to look at the icon. It's the story of Jesus' life in very detailed, spread across the frame, and it's really an amazing piece of artwork. Take a look at it. The other thing that's in the hallway is our Madonna statue. This, to me, was highly unusual. This is something that Father had picked up in Rome, and again, it's a modern statue, but how often have you ever seen a nursing Madonna? And a lot of people in the parish don't even know that it's a nursing Madonna. You walk by it, yeah, Mary's holding a child, yeah, okay. But look at the details. She's really nursing baby Jesus. Have not seen this. I've seen it. If you go to St. Augustine, there's a parish there, Our Lady of Lecce. They have their Madonna is a nursing Madonna, and believe it or not, in in June of this year, we saw cave paintings in Matera in Italy, where they have a lot of caves, and people used to live in these caves, and they had churches in the cave, and on the wall was a nursing Madonna. That's the only other two times I've seen it. I'm sure there's many of them around, but we have one. All right, that sums up what I wanted to talk about. And the only other thought I want to leave you with is a saying that Pope Francis had said. He said, "The church is holy not only because all are welcome, the church is holy because all belong." It's all about everyone, all of us. So enjoy the church. I hope this helps. Think about some of the things that we talked about. Talk to your kids about it, and enjoy it, and go Giants. And are there any questions? Anybody have any questions? You can see me afterward if you do. All right, thanks. I'm sorry, there's one CDs of the dedication of the church. DVD. And the Ministry Center. Their CDs are available, they're free. If you want to take it home, they're in the back table over there.
DVD.
Huwag mo nang i-correct. Yun lang alam nila.
Very good, yeah. It's just okay. It's a DVD.